I'm here with Steve and Sashen, which rhymes with, would say fascia.
Well, Sashen, fascia. Yeah, any of those work. Whatever.
Fashion. and he's the CEO of Xero Shoes. I'm going to read off, Masters All-American sprinter, one of the fastest men over the age of 50 in the U.S., former All-American gymnast. I'd love to hear more about that. Professional stand-up comic. Already,
Well, former professional stand-up comic, yeah.
Cognitive psychology researcher.
Former, yeah. All these things, you're pulling out stuff from my past.
Taught Tai Chi and Zen archery.
All of those things from another lifetime, but yes, it's true technically.
Thank you. It was great meeting you the first time, and loved speaking with you. And I love the Xero Shoes. I mean, I did try them out. I did test them out, and I like to work out barefoot doing tack fit, right? Of course, jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
you barefoot unless you're wearing some kind of wrestling shoe or something like that. But for me, sometimes you have to wear a shoe, right? And I felt like the Xero Shoes were I was reading some of some of the bio as well. You called it the invisible shoe. I felt like I wasn't wearing a shoe, but I was wearing a shoe. And that's huge, right? That's huge. And, we were speaking originally in our first conversation, I would love to have some kind of Xero tack fit shoe in the future, So yeah, thanks for making the time. And I'd love to hear more about how this whole project started. How did Xero Shoes start?
Well, first, I'm just noticing that if you put the two of us together, we'd have a normal haircut. So somehow just combine those two, we'd end up looking somewhat normal. The other thing, pardon me, is, yeah, you nailed it. I mean, first of all, I'd love it if you could say to people what you did to actually put things to the test. Because I didn't just send you a pair of shoes and you said, hey, they're great. I mean, you really, like put them through their paces, yeah?
Yeah, I did. I really did. I really trained with them. I really used them. I really walked around with them as well. Of course, I trained with them, but I also walked around with them, because that was the big thing, right? Because I can just train barefoot, but also, walking around, I want to see how I feel. And I got a lot of compliments too on how they looked, which made
nice.
me look good. Yeah.
almost every customer we have has a story of somebody stopping them on the street to either say, ooh, what are those? Or, oh, are those Xero shoes? So, which is very satisfying for us because, you can see if you look behind us, there's sort of a DNA for a lot of the design. So there's some familiar looks. But the answer to your question, or to address something you said, we started out as invisible shoes because, frankly, it started almost as a joke. I had gotten back into sprinting after a 30-year break when I was 45. That was 13 years ago. And I was getting injured all the time. And a friend of mine who's a world champion runner said, try taking off your shoes and see if running barefoot teaches you anything. And what it taught me was why I was getting injured, but more importantly, how to stop getting injured. And it's not like it's rocket science. Basically, if you're running barefoot on a hard surface, doing it wrong hurts, doing it right feels great. And so, if you give yourself some time to adjust, your brain will help you figure out how to do it right. So I love that natural movement experience, and I wanted to have it as often as I could. And I knew about the Tarahumara Indians in Mexico who wear sandals made of used tire that they just strap to their foot, and they run successfully and injury-free into their 60s, 70s, 80s, sometimes for hundreds of miles at a time over days. So I made my version of that same idea. And I started making for other local barefoot runners. And one day a guy said, I've got a book coming out on barefoot running. And if you treated this little sandal making hobby like a business and had a website, I'd put you in the book. So I rush home and I pitch this incredible opportunity to my wife, who assures me that I have my head completely up my butt and that it's a bad idea, won't make any money. It's really stupid, distraction from other things. And so I'm a good husband. So I said, yeah, you're probably right. And I'm a typical husband. So after she went to bed, I built a website and it just took off. And what happened is, from customer feedback, we went from having a do-it-yourself kit to, hey, people said, I don't want to make my own. So we made a sandal that looks kind of like a ready-to-wear sandal that basically looks like this. So similar to what you would make on your own. And then people say, hey, that's cool, but I don't like stuff between my toes, even though this isn't like a flip-flop where you have to grip with your toes. It holds around your whole foot so you don't have to do anything. But then we made, a sport sandal. So think Chaco Tevequin, except it does things like this and weighs 70% less. And then people said, hey, that's cool. What about in the winter? Or when I'm going to the office, I need shoes. And that's turned into, a complete line of casual and performance shoes, boots, and sandals that people use from everything from recovery to just taking a walk to running ultra marathons to, I mean, everything you can possibly think of. We've got power lifters, people who do Dance Revolution, CrossFitters, you know, you name it. And the idea in part is that it's really simple. Your feet are designed to bend and move and flex and feel. You have a quarter of the bones of your whole body in your feet and ankles and more nerve bendings in your soles than anywhere at your fingertips and your lips. So we want to give you as much of that natural movement experience as you can get, so that it lets your brain know, you know, what's happening with the bottom of your feet. So it knows how to control efficiently and enjoyably the rest of your body. And, you know, as a fighter, and with TacFit as well, that strength and motion start with the feet. And if your feet are squeezed together and they can't get that feedback they need and they can't bend and flex, you know, that's problematic in many, many, many ways. So, you know, here we are trying to help people do what's natural. Frankly, I'll end my rant on this thought. We're helping people rediscover that natural movement is the obvious, better, healthy choice, the way natural food is. Prior to 1970-ish, most footwear was designed basically like this. The modern running shoe is an invention, an intervention that has never been proven to reduce injury, improve performance. I mean, any of the things that they're sold as, they don't reliably do. So that's, here we are.
Interesting. You know, I remember back in the day, like the Nike shoes and the running shoes. I remember going through all those, you know, and I've never felt these invisible shoes, if you want to call it that. Those are, they work for the best for me. I feel the best. And of course, I'm on the mat a lot, and I'm barefoot. But if I want to wear a shoe, I feel good with these shoes, you know, or something. Even like the New Balances, like the New Balances are okay if I have to have closed shoes. But now my new favorite shoes are the Xero, because,
well, we're happy to hear it.
You know, like they look good, and they're very comfortable.
Well, I have to tell you, when we started out as an invisible shoe, because when I came up with this, you know, said to my wife, hey, I'm going to build a website. I needed a name, and that's what popped into my head, because like you said, it feels like you've got nothing on your feet because they're so lightweight, and they don't squeeze your toes together, and they don't mess with your posture by elevating your heel and things like that. But then a couple of years in, like 2 years in, maybe, I was having lunch with a guy who was, he was the head of marketing for a major athletics company. And we'd never met before. He knew of me, I knew of him. So I go to meet him for lunch, and I sit down, and the first thing he does, he looks at my feet and he goes, I can see them. I said, yeah, but it feels like nothing. He goes, I can see them. I said, all right. So that we decided to change from invisible. And then I came up with Xero, which kind of in a way tells a similar story with a more brandable and more interesting name.
Interesting. So what was the process? Like, you made the website, and then people started to put the leads in, their emails.
It just took off. I mean, it really just took off. I put the website up. What I did, I was just participating in conversations that people were having mostly about barefoot running. So this is late 2009, early 2010, when the book Born to Run became popular.
Right.
And so we used to joke that Chris McDougall, who wrote that book, was like our unofficial marketing department, because people would read that book and then they'd be interested in what he was saying, and then they'd search for things, and, you know, there I was. And we were, again, just selling a do-it-yourself sandal making kit, so you could make a shoe that looked like what human beings have been wearing for thousands of years. And I gave away the farm. I made videos showing, here's how you can do it on your own. Just knock yourself out, go get some materials like this. Here's how you can lace them up. And if you want to get the materials easier and less expensively, you know, that's why we're here. So that's really how it began. And again, we started the end of November. And I think one of our first orders was from someone in Minnesota, where we knew it was already snowing. And we thought, well, that's interesting. There's clearly a demand for this. People are already definitely looking. And the way it's expanded is beyond barefoot runners and beyond trail runners and beyond people who've read Born to Run. Because frankly, just the number one thing that we're able to provide is comfort. And that's the number one thing people are looking for in footwear. And the backup, if you will, is that there's all these benefits that have been scientifically proven for, you know, what happens when you let your feet move naturally. Now, those studies have not used our shoes, because we didn't have those shoes when some of those studies were done. There are studies going on now where people are using our shoes, and in a bunch of labs around the world that research natural movement and minimalist footwear, they're using our shoes a lot.
So that night when you set up the website, you sure, honey, you know, and then you went back and you created the website. Yeah. What were you doing at the time? Were you working in? What were you working in?
We were mostly retired, actually. So
Okay.
back in 2000, 99, 2000, we had done some very clever investing that was doing really well. It was actually mostly in real estate. And in 2006, we went, oh crap, this is about to fall apart, because I called, we had another partner, and I called him. I said, my last friend just called me and said they're getting into real estate investing. This is like 99 all over again, when everyone thought they were a day trader. And he
Mhm.
said, yeah, funny you mentioned that. I haven't found any good deals because people don't know how to do what we do correctly. So we started selling everything in 2006, and luckily got out before the crash. But we had just started a search engine marketing business a couple months before Xero Shoes happened. So when the way I calmed Lena down the next morning after I built the website, I said, look, it'll be a good case study for our search engine marketing business. The people that are there now, for all the terms I care about, they're there by accident. I should be able to own this in like 3 months. And I was wrong. It only took me 6 weeks. So by the 6 week mark, this was our full-time job. We thought it was going to be, maybe a car payment. We'd never imagined that now 10 and a half years later, we would have put shoes on, oh gosh, over 500,000 people in 97 countries who've now had the experience of natural movement.
That's amazing, And after I spoke to you the first time, I could see this is obvious. It's not just business. It's not just job. Like, it's something you're truly passionate about. It's like your life. Yeah, I saw your background, and you running, and then gymnastics, and these kinds of things.
It's like the perfect combo of all those things. It really is kind of crazy. And one of the things that isn't in my bio that really adds to the perfectness of it, if you will, I don't like it when people make money by lying to other people. I don't like it when people are deluded and take action based on misinformation. And the footwear industry is nothing but propaganda and mythology. I mean, it is utterly amazing that it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf,
Mm.
but except in the boy who cried wolf, the difference is that for footwear companies, it's the footwear company that cried cushioning mostly, or motion control, or arch support, or something that has never been proven to be effective or efficient. And yet, in the boy who cried wolf, the villagers eventually get smart and don't show up. In the footwear world, every 18 months, there's some new magic technology, and people go, oh, that must be it. And it never has been. And in fact, the closest thing to a benefit, this one amazes me. Nike has a new shoe they came out with, and they advertise it as designed to reduce injury, as if there's a shoe that was designed to increase injury. I mean, that's of course ridiculous, but they paid for and designed a test that someone independently ran. So they call it an independent test, where they tested this new shoe, the React Infinity Run, against their best-selling motion control running shoe. And it's true, the React Infinity Run had a 50% lower injury rate during a 12-week study than their other shoe, their best-selling motion controlled shoe. Now, what they didn't say, and you have to read between the lines and then get the actual research, the best-selling shoe in a 12-week study, and basically it means in 10 to 11 weeks of the study, injured over 30% of the people who were trying it. The new shoe, it only injured like 14.5% in about 10 to 11 weeks. That's kind of like saying, hey, which restaurant do you want to go to tonight? The one that gives you food poisoning 1 out of 7 meals or 1 out of 3 meals? I mean, it's ludicrous.
Interesting. A lot of the stuff is, it's like how you feel, but also how they look. I just think of the Jordans, when I was growing up,
Yeah.
in high school, and having, the Jordans, and then they had the Reebok pumps, and they have all these
Yeah.
fancy kind of shoes. Not that I was a basketball player, but they were cool, right? And then now it kind of evolving, say evolving, but for me, it's evolved, into, this minimalist, invisible shoe, and it's, that's what I feel is best for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, here's the thing. So we have a friend who, he was a Harvard Business School guy and made a lot of money in business. When he first heard about this whole natural movement idea, he called people that he knows who were like senior VPs and executives and chairman of whatever at a number of footwear companies. And they all, and like big companies whose names you would know. And he said, what do you think about this whole barefoot natural movement thing? And they said, oh, it's totally legit, but we can't do it because it would be admitting that everything else we've been doing is complete bullshit. And people
yes.
know. Again, Dr. Irene Davis at Harvard, she asked a question to a panel that I was on at the American College of Sports Medicine. It was me, a guy from Brooks, a guy from Adidas. And she said, look, in the 60s, we were running in super thin soled running shoes. We were playing basketball in Chuck Taylors. we weren't seeing the kind of injuries or the severity of injuries or even the number of injuries we're seeing now. So what problem were you trying to solve and why didn't it work? And it's like deadly silent. And finally, I just chime in. I go, look, let's just call it what it is. The more you understand about feet and biomechanics and the importance of natural movement, the more you look at the actual research about natural movement, you can't conclude anything other than the design of the modern athletic shoe is fundamentally wrong. Deadly silent. Then the guy from Adidas says, yeah, but not everyone's going to switch to your shoes right away. It's like, that's the best you got? So of course they won't, because you brainwash them into thinking they need arch support and motion control and things for which there's no evidence. So yeah, it's going to take a little time, but that's okay. You know, I'm totally fine with that. Do you know why modern athletic shoes look the way they do? It's a really cool one.
Yeah.
Oh, this is really interesting. So back in the early 70s, Nike was sharing a building with some, I don't remember if they were orthopedic podiatrists or sports podiatrists, something like that. And he came up to them and said, I'm getting a bunch of new runners and they're getting Achilles tendonitis. So what do you recommend we do? And these doctors said, well, their Achilles have shortened from wearing higher heeled dress shoes. So make a higher heeled running shoe to accommodate that. I'm going to cut to the end of the story where one of these doctors was at a track meet with a friend of mine, a guy who worked at Nike for 30 years, like directly with Bowerman. And my friend said, so, you know, your design idea has become the ubiquitous design, the design that every modern athletic shoe is currently using. What do you think about that? And the doctor said, biggest mistake we ever made. He said, we didn't have any evidence for this idea of, you know, Achilles shortening. We were making a lot of orthotics and prosthetics. So that's how we saw everything. And that's just the answer we came up with. But there's no evidence that it was useful.
You know, like my son, he has, you know, like flat feet and, you know, and some foot issues. And so some of the doctors, you take him to one podiatrist and, you know, they have him with the insoles and he was taking them out and he wasn't following along because it didn't feel good. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, the old school doctors, you know, the guys that were like, you know, they've been around the block. They were like, man, it'll just straighten out, or they just gave a good advice, you know, but it's really frustrating because you don't know who to believe. You go to all these different doctors and then the specialists and, you know, they're not understand like the whole, right. They're just looking at one thing.
Yeah.
And they have all this,
here's
misinformation, but yeah, it is really.
Here's the simplest thing that I say. First of all, we have if you go to xeroshoes.com/orthotics, I talk about an article that was in the New York Times written by one of my favorite science writers. I mean, she's really brilliant. And also she has the greatest name ever. Her name is Gina Colada. And so Gina looked at the whole idea about insoles and orthotics and found that they only work on about 10% of the population. No one knows which 10%. A custom-made $500 orthotic is no better than a Dr. Scholl's insole. And most doctors agree that you're supposed to use those for like recovering from some injury, not for your whole life. Because if you think about it, you know that if you support any joint, you know, you put a cast on your arm, it gets weaker over time. Same thing with your foot. If you don't let your foot bend and flex and move, it gets weaker over time. In fact, there's research coming out showing how they put an insole, an arch support, in the footwear of healthy athletes. And within 12 weeks, they had lost 10% of the muscle mass in their feet. Conversely, there's research from Sarah Ridge that shows that if you just walk in a shoe like this, again, she didn't do the study with this shoe, but you just walk in a shoe like ours, it builds foot muscle strength as much as if you did an actual foot strengthening exercise program. She didn't think to do both of, you know, foot strengthening program plus walking around in these shoes. It's kind of on the to-do list. But again, the simple thing is, when is getting weaker better than being stronger? And I would argue the answer is practically never.
Yeah. How about the grounding? Like the grounding kind of, people talk about the grounding and those kinds of things.
We have to?
With the rubber soles.
Do we have to? So let me just say this without getting,
because there's so much information, right? Like what's right, what's wrong.
So here's the deal. All right, I'm about to piss off some people and it's not my intention, but it'll happen, because here's the thing about human beings that we all know. I do this, you do this, we all do this. When we have certain beliefs, that belief gets tied in with our identity in subtle, sometimes simple ways, sometimes big ways. But the thing we know about human beings is if they believe something and you give them information that is contrary to what they believe, if you give them facts, they will often not only not change their mind, but now believe even more what they already believed. So I know that's probably going to happen for some people. And so my apologies, just put up with me for a second. And let me just say that one of the things that makes us lock onto a belief is a good story. And one of our favorite stories involve getting what we want in the future, how to be healthier, how to be happier, how to be richer. And, you know, if someone tells you, and what we do when we imagine what we think we need to be happy, we look for people who will tell us how to get there. And if they have a good story about how to get there, we will lock onto that. We'll give them a whole bunch of money, even if we see over and over and over that that story and similar stories have not worked for us or for millions of other people who've tried. And they'll usually bring out, you know, some crazy example of someone who used their technology and it did give them what they wanted, but then you look closely and you find out it's not quite what they think or what they said. There's a lot of mythology built into that too. So that said, some stories are better than others or more true than others, but they're not as compelling. So here's a weird example. We all know the concept of the Freudian slip. And the idea is that somehow something comes out of our mouth that we didn't mean to say, but is really the true thing that we've been hiding. Well, around the time that Freud came up with this idea, and by the way, he came up with this idea after treating as a doctor, I think it was 11 basically teenage Victorian girls. Not a lot to build a theory on, but we'll leave that as we like. There was another doctor at that same time who analyzed these verbal slips. And he found that there's patterns. There's a very finite number of things that we do, and there's a whole lot of things we don't do. So if we'll switch the first syllable of two words, but we'll never switch the last syllable of two words, or, you know, things like that. And so he came up with this, and I wish I could remember the guy's name. It starts with an M, but I can't remember it. His theory was that we do these verbal slips because language is a challenging processing thing. Basically, it's a computer glitch. That's it. Okay, but which is the more compelling story? That sometimes processing information is challenging and causes problems, or there's an evil inner twin hiding inside your mind who's trying to get information out that you don't want people to know. That's a way better story. So people believe that. Even people like Freud's daughter, she'll still say things like Freudian slip after she says that most of what her dad said was made up. So, all right, here's the easier story for the whole grounding idea. Again, core to the bones and joints in your whole body, right. More nerve endings in your soles than anywhere but your fingertips and your lips. And your brain has a big chunk of it wired to get information from your feet about, are you stepping on something good? Are you stepping on something bad? Are you moving in a way that's good? Are you moving in a way that's bad? If you're standing on this thing, is that telling you that food or water is nearby? Or, you know, it's not going to tell you that a mate is nearby, probably. That would be superhuman things that you could pick up from your feet. Although, I mean, it is an interesting question. Why do some people have a foot fetish? That's a whole other story. But suffice it to say,
they say it's next to on the somatocortex, right? It's right next to each other, like the genitals and the.
It is. And well, you know, if you think about it, so let's talk about it for the fun of it, and then we'll come back. So when you think about it, as we're developing as fetuses, before we have legs, I mean, our little foot buds are right next to our little genital buds, and then legs come out. So there is a direct connection between, you know, your feet and your nads. So, but anyway, so your brain is, so we know being out in nature feels good. Right. I mean, there's a lot of even science having to prove something as simple as that. And we know that when we're walking on things that feel good, it feels good because that's our brain telling us that this is a good thing. So this will sound weird and subtle. Sugar doesn't inherently taste good. We evolved to like the taste of sugar because it gave us something that we need, AKA calories. Things that we step on feel good because we learned at some point that that feeling is a sign of something good near us or around us or, you know, somewhere in the right direction. So, and that feeling good is not just a feeling, it's a neurochemical thing that can reduce stress. And we know reducing stress is a good thing. So when we're typically barefoot, we're often out in nature and we're often stepping on things that feel, you know, relatively good or good many of the times. And sometimes feeling good is getting information. It's not even a pleasant feeling, it's information. So all of that contributes to your brain saying, awesome, that feels good, releases neurochemicals, that's really good for you. Reduces stress, really good for you. That's the simple story. That's the brain has problems processing story. The more amazing story is that all health problems are caused by us being disconnected from the ground. And if we electrically connect to the ground, electrons penetrate our body, neutralize free radicals, which are the cause of inflammation, which are the cause of all of our problems. That's a much more interesting story, admittedly. It's just not true. So your body is actually, your skin can build an electrical charge And that's a good thing because that means the electricity essentially is passing over your body. This is why 99.5% of people who get struck by lightning survive without a problem. The current passes around their body, around their skin, basically, to ground. But 100% of all trees that get struck by lightning explode because the current goes through the trees into the water in the cells and makes them superheated, turn into steam, and explode. This free radical thing, you need free radicals. Free radicals are what makes your immune system work. So that's how your immune system keeps away things that are bad. If you neutralized free radicals, you'd be dead within like 48 hours. And besides, free radicals are neutralized by ions, electrically charged particles, not electricity, not electrons. If it was electricity, you could just suck on a battery and get that benefit, which, by the way, you wouldn't want to have. So you put it all together, and I mean, there's more to it, but the gist is that's a complicated story that where people can say, well, but I had benefits. Like, yeah, but you probably got those benefits for a different reason than what you think and a different reason than what you were sold. I'm all for the benefits. I'm just not for pseudoscience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sorry to go down that rabbit hole. I know it's, I'm just curious, you know, that you have the grounding mats and all those things that, you know, people are using for the beds to take off the charge of the phones and everything else. Right. So it's what do you know?
Let's just say that in that world, there's three things. There's some science that hasn't been reproduced by independent researchers. There's people who make a bunch of money by selling certain products. And there's some ideas that get conflated, that get confused. So again, you might get a positive benefit from doing something for a very different reason than what someone just sold you. And it's important to try to tease out some of the reality. I mean, it's problematic. It's really easy if you like wear a white lab coat or have certain initials after your name, you can tell people something and they automatically believe you. I know that some people won't believe what I just said because I look like this. I mean, that's the way it is. I was a pre-med in college. I didn't go to med school because I was already doing things that they told me I had to do 8 more years of training to actually do with human beings again. That made no sense to me. So, so the challenge is if someone doesn't know about the relevant, what's the word I'm looking for? Realms of studies. If you don't know about biology or physics or chemistry, somebody can tell you stories about biology, chemistry, and physics that sound really compelling, but you don't know how to assess whether they're real or not because you're not talking on the same frequency.
Right.
And so, and it just so happens, I mean, I started teaching people physics when I was 14. I was a pre-med, so I was majoring in chemistry and biology. Essentially, I was majoring in psychology, but I was doing chemistry and biology and math and physics and all those things all simultaneously. So I know a bunch about them.
Nice. And then the other thing is the Vibram shoes, for example, because they were working with TACFIT in Europe, and so they had some. I'd wear them, and one, it was hard to get the shoes on, you know, but two, then people start to say that that you need that space in between, because it creates a space between your toes, so it's like unnatural. Could you and the Xero shoes don't have that. When I looked at,
we don't have separate toes, but we don't have separate toes, but we have shoes that are wide enough to try to let your toes spread. Not perfect for all human beings. I mean, we've seen some crazy ass feet where they're practically square. There's sort of a bell curve for the shape of feet, and we try to get as much of that curve as we possibly can, but we're not perfect. And we're a small company. We can't, make things for everybody as much as I would like to. Pardon me, I suddenly have the hiccups. So for some people, having stuff between their toes is really unpleasant and annoying. I tried on the 5-finger shoes back in 2006 when they first came out, and they didn't fit my feet. My second toe is much longer than my first. And I kept going back and trying them like every 6 months. You know how like late at night you go to the fridge and you don't see what you want, and then you come back 5 minutes later as if it's a psychic replicator. So I kept trying on the shoes every 6 months, and they never quite fit. If they had, I probably wouldn't have started Xero Shoes. Yeah. But again, it's a personal preference thing. Some people really like it. Some people it gets in the way. Naturally, your toes are meant to kind of be more spread out than they are for most people. If you squeeze your foot into shoes, it's going to change your bones, but that can change by letting them do what's natural. And letting your feet spread in some way, whether it's barefoot or in Xero Shoes or in anything else, is really important for things like balance and power. Think about it. If I ask you to drop and do some push-ups, you don't put your hands like this, you put your hands like this. Well, same thing for your feet. You get more information, more balance, more control if your feet can move, if your toes can spread.
Yeah, there's a a movement called, we call it sit through, you know, where you twist, right? You grab the ground with your feet, you know, and with the Vibram, with the toes, I don't feel like I could really fully grab the ground with them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've never actually worn a pair for more than like 10 seconds, so I have no idea what the
Yeah,
experience
so
is.
I wore them and I never really felt connected because
Interesting.
of the way the toes, whatever it was, you know. But that's not the case with the Xero. So I was like, cool, you know, right on. And then after
Sweet.
speaking to you finally, I was like, wow, this he really knows. He really knows a lot, you know.
Well, I mean, look, I've basically been doing this for 12, 13 years. So that's part of it. I'm also, I mean, I like to know how things work. And then again, just given my weird background, this is just, it's just kind of the perfect fit. I have to tell you a funny story about that. So we started out, most of our products, not all of them are vegan friendly, but we have a couple products that are made of leather because people asked for them. They needed them for work or for whatever their specific job was. They needed something that wasn't fabric because they were dealing with moisture or water or fluids in some way. And so a lot of people were really upset when we made our first leather shoe because they thought we were a vegan company, and we're a natural movement company that does vegan things whenever we can. And so someone said, well, why don't you use that mushroom leather? And I immediately replied, oh, you mean that stuff they've only made 1 yard of so far? Yeah, it's not available. Well, why don't you use the pineapple leather? And I immediately replied, oh, you mean the stuff that specifically says not for use for footwear? Well, why don't you use, this other synthetic leather? I said, oh, the one that says it's going to crack and break within, X number of bending cycles. And the guy comes back and says, well, what makes you such a damn expert? The fact that this has been my life for 11 years and I'm not doing it just for no reason. I mean, look, if somebody proved me wrong, I'm the first one to say I'm out. I'm about the truth first and foremost.
Yeah.
And if I'm mistaken about something, I don't have a problem with that. But if someone says you're mistaken, let's dive in and take a look. So for example, someone will say, well, isn't there research that showed that people got injured more in the 5-finger shoes, or got injured in the 5-finger shoes? I went, well, yeah, there is research that shows that, but let's take a look at the study. So you have to dive in. If you look at the study, you find that they never paid attention to people's form. And so people can run with crazy form and create certain kind of injuries. If you overstride, if you reach your foot out way in front of your body, and you hear that if you're running naturally, you're supposed to land on the ball of your foot. If you reach out and then point your toes, you're putting excessive strain on your metatarsals. That could lead to a stress fracture. If you run with proper form, that will go away because you're using your foot in a strong position. You're using the shock absorbers and springs built into your body. They're called your legs, the muscles and ligaments and tendons in your legs and hips and back properly. So form is an issue. But the other thing is, what the study showed wasn't that they necessarily got stress fractures, was that under an X-ray, they showed micro fractures. But that's what makes your bones stronger. The way you build up bone strength is by stressing them, and it creates these little microfractures that when they heal, make your bones more dense. So as far as we could tell, this was good news, except for, someone who might have had just crazy form that they didn't do anything with. So you have to look at these studies carefully. There was a study that came out of the University of Colorado about efficiency, VO2 max, how well you process oxygen. And it said that runners who were barefoot had worse VO2 max than runners on with padding. I said, well, and they said in the study that they used accomplished barefoot runners. And I said to the guy who did the study, I know all the accomplished barefoot runners in town. I'm one of them. Neither I nor anyone that I know was in your lab at all, let alone for that study. And besides, nobody ever said that running barefoot improves your VO2 max. So it was just hand waving and straw man and things, things that were totally irrelevant. So you have to kind of look at that. Or Vibram got sued for $3.75 million. And the way people hear it was they got sued because the shoes injured people, which isn't true. They got sued because they made a medical claim, these shoes will make your feet stronger, but they didn't have a study to back that up. So they got sued for making an unfounded medical claim. Well, they also settled out of court. And one of the reasons that we think they settled is because there was enough studies on other shoes that let your feet move more than regular shoes where people's feet got stronger. So there was enough dots you could connect, even though there wasn't a specific study, where it seemed like there was really no case. And we also know that Vibram wanted to settle because they just didn't care. $3.75 million is like, just we'll be done with it. We don't need to worry about this. And last but not least, there was people from major shoe companies who heard about the settlement, and they used their PR department to put out the word to the media that, hey, this case settled because it shows that barefoot isn't good for you, because they were selling regular shoes. So you got to dive in more than most people are willing to find out what the truth is. And there's a lot of companies who have a vested interest in not telling you the truth. Sorry, last thought, this related to this. Someone argued with me and said, well, there is no specific study that shows that barefoot, for example, is better. I said, you're right. And the reason there isn't is it would be time consuming and expensive. And the only people who have that kind of money would not come out looking good if the study showed what they already believe too, which is that natural movement is in fact better. So that study doesn't happen. But, and this will sound weird, let's talk about Jesus. So no one's ever showed me a selfie with Jesus. There's no pictures of Jesus. There's no paintings of Jesus from the time when Jesus was ostensibly alive. I'm not saying he was or he wasn't, but we don't have primary data about Jesus's existence. And saying Jesus's existence is really challenging. But what we have instead, we look at a bunch of other data that points to, if you put all that data on a circle, you hope all the arrows point to the middle. And if they do, then you can go, Jesus probably existed, probably was here, probably did the following things. If the points on the circle point all over the place, you go, maybe it was just maybe some folklore. Maybe it was an amalgamation of things. Maybe it's not what we think. Well, if you look at the research carefully, all the stuff there's a whole lot of stuff pointing into natural movement is better. And the stuff that seems to point out falls apart. Just falls apart. So when the big shoe companies say we don't have data to prove that we reduce injury and improve performance, I go, we do. Really simple.
Yeah. How did you, natural movement, how did you come across Scott Sonnen, and how did that begin?
Dude, I'm a fitness dork.
Yeah, you blew my mind how deep your knowledge was when I was like, wow, okay.
I'm fascinated by human performance. Again, I was an All-American gymnast. I'm a Masters All-American sprinter. I like lifting. I like bodies that move. And so I think it was actually a friend of mine who's equally dorky who years ago turned me on to Scott. And I was just fascinated by the work. I thought it was super, super cool. And I'm always a big fan of movement, fitness, exercise things that are, again, more about natural in a real way and less about, just moving iron. Look, I like moving iron as much as the next guy. I love squatting. I love deadlifting. I love doing high velocity stuff. But especially as I get older, I can't pull as hard as I used to, not because I can't lift the amount, because I've got a broken spine. So my doctors don't want me deadlifting or squatting. So, I'm trying to find ways around that because, putting 400 pounds on a bar is really fun. The first time I pulled 400, it was like, shit, now I got to do 500. It's, there's a built-in things that I enjoy. But again, I've taught Tai Chi and yoga and Zen archery and tap dancing. You name it. And so I really loved what Scott was up to. And I remember doing some workouts early on. There was one that I did. I wish I could remember. It was very early on. He put out a workout on YouTube and I did it. And man, it wasted me, which I love when that happens because it doesn't happen often, especially with things that seem so simple. Oh man, I thought that was just brilliant.
And so did you study like some of the CST, the circular strength training?
I did. This is a while ago. I'll be honest. When I really got serious about sprinting, I really changed my focus to doing almost nothing that wasn't contributing directly to my getting that much faster. To just improving the posterior chain, improving my reaction time, and all those things that'll get me 0.2 of a second faster, which is a crazy goal to have. But in sprinting, that's the difference between life and death.
Yeah, interesting. We have a TACFit team leader from Spain. He's going to do a TACFit runner 101.
Well, see, this is an interesting thing. People say to me, "Oh, you're a runner." I go, "No. I'm a sprinter. I don't run." I hear, like on a track, I do the 100 indoors if it's a 50 or 60 meters depending on the track. I hear that there's a thing at the end of the track called what's it called? A turn? Is that the way it works? I don't use those things. It's too far.
So you're a sprinter. Interesting. Yeah.
And there's not a lot of us. We're an unusual breed.
And what kept you racing? I guess it's your personality. right? But what gets you excited about, you know, training for races and
Wow, it's a good
running?
question. So so after my gymnast days, I moved to Colorado. I was about 32. I was actually just warming up, doing something really, really easy that I'd done a million times. And I ended up landing and twisting at the same time. And I heard this sound from my knee. And I went, and literally as I was falling to the ground, I went, and we're done. So I spent a good, geez, man, a long time, almost 10 years, 48, no, like over 10 years, almost 15 years, trying to find something that my body enjoyed that I could do that had a reason for my doing it. So I got into, for example, I got into circus arts like Chinese pole and, trapeze things, really crazy stuff, which was fun, but there's no opportunity to do it. I'm not going to get recruited by Cirque du Soleil. There's no masters, Chinese pole competition. And almost anything that you're going to do at a high level, of course, is hard. And so I couldn't justify the hard work with the possibility of doing something with it. I mean, showing off for friends by doing a flag is no big deal. So then one day at brunch, pardon me, a friend of mine came in. He had just won his first 5K. He was a runner for a long time, but just won his first race. And I said, I love the idea of running, but I'm not a runner. I was always a sprinter. And he said, well, there's a whole master's track and field circuit. I went, what? He goes, yeah. They do all the events, including all the sprinting events. So he introduced me to a coach and I got into it. I eventually dumped that coach because he didn't really know how to work with sprinters. But the thing that I like about it, I like having a goal.
Yeah.
I like having competition.
Yeah.
I like having, a reason to do these things. And there's a funny component to it, which is at this age, to be this competitive and work this hard is really stupid. There's no bonus points. There's no sponsorship money. I'm not going to be in a Nike commercial for myriad reasons. But I'm old enough, and all the people that I compete against, we're all old enough to know that being this competitive for no really good reason and working this hard is stupid. So it's kind of like having a secret handshake. It's like, oh, you're an idiot too? Welcome to the club. And I've literally never met anyone on the track who I don't totally adore. It's just look, with COVID, I had a really good indoor season and then all the outdoor meets got canceled. But I'm still training for this coming indoor season as if it's going to happen. And I'm still training in a way for next year's outdoor season in case, as if it's going to happen. And that's really motivating. If I was doing it for just, it's fun, but it's such hard work that it needs more than that. And there's another thing, which is just some camaraderie. I mean, I train with a woman who's 10 years older than I am, but she's a multiple world champion. And so she's really, really good. And having people to do this crazy thing with is really, really satisfying. I mean, these are people who I love so much and I care about so much. And that's one of the things that gets us out of bed on those cold mornings in Colorado when you don't really want to go sprinting, but you got to put in those numbers and you don't have access to an indoor track. So we've literally shoveled the snow on the track one day and then come back the next day to run on the track. I mean, why would you do that?
You talk about moving, right? How you said you're like a student of movement.
Yeah.
And do you feel like, having a goal, like, the camaraderie and all the benefits that you get from running and being in this arena, do you feel like it makes you work better at, Xero and just live your life better?
That's an interesting question. I think it's more that it's just, it just mirrors my life in a way. So, I mean, I really do somebody did an analysis of the personality of a sprinter, and it wasn't like reading the horoscopes where you could just swap them around and any of them would apply to you. This was on the money, and very specific. And all the sprinters I know, we do have certain characteristics that are in common. So it's more that it's just like the perfect combo of things that makes it work. By the way, there's one other thing I just remembered that's why I really like sprinting. You can't do it perfectly. There's an intermittent reinforcement thing, because you can always be better, and that's very addictive, literally addictive. So like at the end of a race, if someone says to me, how'd you do? My answer is, do you want it with the excuse or without the excuse? Do you just want me to give you a number, or do you want me to tell you why that number should have been better if I didn't fall out of the blocks or miss that one step, or whatever it is? And so that kind of Las Vegas slot machine kind of thing is another thing that gets me going. But again, I think it's really, it's just that the way, with Xero Shoes, the way I say it is all companies rise to the level of the neuroses of their founders. And so there's certain things that I do that are probably not best for the company, but that's just the way my personality is. And so that's the way it works right now. Happily, my wife, who's my co-founder and CFO, is very different. And so we're a good balancing act. You know, when I'm going too fast, she slows me down. When she's going a little slow, I try to, you know, pick up the pace a little bit. And it's been the most satisfying thing in my life working with this brilliant woman who I adore.
That's great. I feel the same with my wife. She's the opposite in a lot of ways. And with us together, working together with a lot of projects, it works out. We're a good team.
It's really, you know, when it works that way, because I know a lot of couples for whom it didn't work, but when it does, I mean, isn't it just like, I mean, it just makes me so happy. I see her doing some things that are really helping for the business. And it's just like, I feel so ridiculously lucky.
Yeah.
And, you know, plus the fact that she's just smoking hot.
That's awesome. You know,
Except
wait,
I have to interrupt. Wait, except the problem with that is that means there's all these pictures in our house of the hot chick and the guy standing next to her. So.
You had on the xeroshoes.com, you had a picture of you and your wife, and you're like, you can't tell who's the man and the woman because you guys have similar haircut.
Yeah, I think she only married me because of the hair.
You always had long hair?
No, my hair was like, you know, let's call it normal length till I was about 31, 32. But one day I hadn't gotten it cut in a while because I was busy starting another business. And I got this little curl in the front and I went, I wonder what happened. I didn't have curly hair. It was basically like straight and maybe a little wavy. And I was just kind of curious. And so I decided to grow it out to see what happened. And it turned into this.
I kept it ever since. You know,
she told me she'd leave me if I cut it.
We talked about Thomas Anna, the
oh my God, yeah,
author. You know, could you repeat the story? Because we were talking about him because you know Scott mentions him in his CST manual and his stuff, and then you kind of I was like, oh wow, you knew him personally.
Well, do you want to say more about who he is?
You go ahead and talk about him.
Thomas Hanna is the guy who brought Moshe Feldenkrais to America, and then he kind of riffed on what Feldenkrais was doing and came up with some variations that he called somatics, and he wrote a book called Somatics. And Feldenkrais, for people who don't know it, is fascinating because one of the principles is basically this whole idea of no pain, no gain. It's the opposite of that. And so you do things if you have an injury on one side, you'll do things on the good side, the other side, and get that nice and smooth. And then you try the bad side, which will feel really uncoordinated at first, but then it catches up really quickly because your brain basically, this is not true, but I'll say it this way, sends information from the good side to the bad side. And it really emphasizes not doing things that cause pain or that you know, you just go to just the edge. You don't push too far. And there's some really cool things. Like one of my favorite things to show people is like turn your head as far as you can to the left and then to the right. And then the next time you do it, turn your head to the left and your eyes to the right. And then the other way around, head to the right, eyes to the left, and then just go normal again. And you'll suddenly see that you're turning further just from doing this counter movement of head and eyes. There's like all these fascinating things like that. So Hannah, so I had gotten turned on to this work. This is in 1998. And Tom, I was living in New York. And 98? No, 88. Wait, when was that? Hold on. When did I move out here? I moved out here in 93. So 88. Okay, got it. Jeez. So I had somehow gotten turned on to this work. I was living in New York. He was in Marin County, north of San Francisco. And I had just some gymnast problems, shoulder problem, back pain things. And I don't know how it happened, but I called him and I said, you know, can I come see you? And he goes, yeah. So I was traveling to Asia, and on the way out and on the way back, I did some sessions with Tom, and it was mind blowing. I mean, I'll never forget, I had like some tension in this lat, and he has me do this one weird little thing where suddenly I'm reaching as far as I can, and suddenly I'm reaching a foot farther than I had a second ago. And I just felt this wave of energy and bliss. It was like, whoa. And so, yeah, I'm just a massive, massive fan of him. Sadly, he died, and his work and Feldenkrais for people who are good at that. Like anything, there's people who know it and there's people who are really good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. My last podcast, I spoke to Jan Sultan. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He was a direct student of Ida Rolf.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Which is right out here in Boulder. Rolfing is
Roping, yeah.
Awesome
So
Boulder.
he's actually the stepdad of one of my best friends, Amal Easton, who's in Boulder as well. He has Boulder, what was it? Easton Training Center now, but it was Boulder Brazilian Jiu Jitsu at the beginning, and
Oh, that's
he
funny.
was the first Jiu Jitsu gym in Colorado. They have a bunch of schools out there now. It's kind of a crazy situation now, but um,
Yeah, there's
uh,
a lot of competition in the BJJ world.
but just the fact that they're the closures and that's the opposite of social distancing, right?
Yeah, yeah. I talked to some guys from 10th Planet, and I said, so what are you guys doing with COVID? They said, we're putting in a new ventilation system. We're gonna. It's like, dude, none of that shit's gonna work. I mean, what are you, nuts?
There's no way. It's either you're ready to do it or you're not, and a lot
Yeah,
of them aren't, for sure.
yeah.
Even though I think they're allowed to have gyms again now open, right, in Colorado.
I believe so. People are being a little skittish about going in. Yeah, I don't even want to get into any of the story or controversy about all that. But for now, I would rather stay away instead of
Yeah,
rolling
yeah,
with people.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I was gonna the what was I gonna say about the Thomas Hanna? Yeah, it's just interesting. You know all these things, and you're just constantly studying. Or we spoke that first time. Where do you see? Where would you like to see? It's not just like you said at the beginning. It's not just like a business. It's not just like something to make money. Like after I spoke to you the first time, like this is your life. Like you believe in what you're doing. You're always studying. You're always learning,
I believe in
and
the truth.
you believe in the truth. And you really wanna help people. Like in this way, right? This is like
Yeah.
however all the stars were aligned for you.
Well, look, referring to Irene Davis again, she said to me a while ago, she said, we just got kids wearing your shoes. In 20 years, we wouldn't be treating adults for the billions of dollars of problems they currently go to see doctors for: foot, hip, ankle, back, knee problems, et cetera. Um, that motivates me a lot. My dad is one of those people who had bad balance, wore big shoes all his life. One day tripped, fell down, broke his hip, and was dead 2 weeks later. Balance problems in the elderly is a big deal. We think we can be helpful there because, again, if you let your feet feel, you're sending information to your brain that
Right.
it's designed to help you with balance. There's every couple of years someone does a study. They have some device that makes your feet or ankles vibrate, and they go, "Hey, look, it helps elderly people with their balance, helps Parkinson's people with mobility." And I wrote a blog post years ago, like 9 years ago, saying you don't need magic vibrating insoles. Just take off your shoes and go for a walk. We got an email from a guy, or a letter from a guy. He was 82 years old. He said, I was looking for the magic vibrating insoles, but I found your blog post instead. And since I couldn't find the magic vibrating insoles, I put your theory to the test. And that was 2 weeks ago. And I just threw away my walker. That's a big deal. We have, I'm not making, I can't make medical claims. I'm just reporting anecdotal information. Objects in mirror are closer than they appear. We've heard from parents of kids with autism and ADHD reporting that, a thing we hear often is, my kids hate wearing shoes. They love wearing your shoes. And my theory about things like ADHD in particular, if you think about what Ritalin does, Ritalin is a stimulant. It's
Right.
kind of speeding up your brain a little bit. But what it does for kids with ADHD is it kind of speeds up their brain to create a background hum that's calming. It reminds me of when I lived in Manhattan and I could meditate really well on a subway because the background noise kind of was louder than my thinking. And so, and with autism, I think it's just that proper stimulation that might be helpful. We've heard this from Special Olympics athletes as well. So we've also heard from professional athletes who, one WNBA player, she was just wearing our sandals off the court. She goes, my feet have become indestructible. So I think we can improve performance and reduce injury for professional athletes as well. And there's things that I want to do around that. And then, of course, the biggest thing is just, comfort. So put it all together. I mean, I know it sounds hyperbolic when I say it. We're just trying to change the world. We're just trying to have people have an experience of optimal health, feet first, because those things are your foundation. And they have been neglected and people have been misled about what it takes. I mean, I'm going to refer to Irene Davis one more time. I asked her how she got hip to this whole natural movement thing, because she was originally at the University of Delaware teaching physical therapists how to make orthotics, among other things. And suddenly she said, one day I realized that when a patient comes in to see us for almost anything that's going on, we want them to be moving as much as possible, as much as they can, as often as possible, except we were immobilizing their feet. Why would we do that? That doesn't seem to make sense. And it doesn't, in fact. So that's sort of the one of her initial kind of aha moments that then led to her being at Harvard with, running a clinical lab and a research lab, where she's helped almost 1,000 people who've come in injured and walked out uninjured and healthy and performing better than they ever have before by starting with the feet and getting things to work from that point forward. So that's our goal. I mean, as a natural movement company, there's actually things way beyond footwear that I think we can do that I'm looking forward to doing. And so my to-do list is really, really long, and happily we're starting to bring in the people and the resources that we need to make these things happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you. You guys are the real deal, no doubt. And after my first conversation with you, I was like, wow, and I had seen like, I think an ad, or I'd seen something, and it caught my eye. And then when you reached out, I was like, wow, this is great,
Thanks.
And after talking to you, I was like, no doubt. So thank you for all the work that you do. Xero Shoes for sure for me, and I hope to be able to somehow have some kind of tack fit, because it's the real deal. That's the shoe you want to wear. We have like these boots, but they're like really for indoor and mats. But for
wait, I want to grab two shoes. Hold on, because the two that you had were this one, the HFS, and the Speed Force. Which one? Which
the black one? The black one.
The Speed Force. Yeah, this is like the closest thing to barefoot that we make. Really, really lightweight. I mean, feels like a sock. A men's line weighs, like 5.5 ounces. This is what I train in. So if I'm not barefoot on the track,
Could you roll that thing up? Could you roll up that shoe again?
Like that?
Yeah. Wow. That's what I'm talking about. That's like a sock.
Yeah.
It feels like a shoe.
I know these. In fact, I got to tell you another story about this. I developed this actually with that guy from Nike that I mentioned, not the ones who gave Bowerman the bad ideas, but the one who were at the track meet saying, "What do you think?" This is based on a multi-100-year-old design where he did a shoemaking workshop. He came out here. We had a few people who were learning how to make shoes, and you take this panel and this panel, and then a piece that goes from here all the way around to here, and you sew that together. It takes like 10 minutes, and it's a really comfortable shoe. And I went, wait a minute. And then I took our do-it-yourself sandal kit and strapped it on like this. And there was couple of really good runners. I said, try this out, see what you think. They went, oh my God, this is the greatest running shoe I've ever had. And so then we commercialized it. We turned it into something that you could actually make instead of, that crazy, weird sewn together thing. And that turned into the Speed Force, which it's my favorite shoe. The HFS is sort of people's, is my second favorite. And then there's all these other things based on use case. But yeah, if you're looking for just like the closest thing to a barefoot feeling, this is the Speed Force.
Speed Force. Nice. Awesome. Thank you, Stephen.
So wait, I got to say, xeroshoes.com, xeroshoes.com. Or you can find us, by the way, at Xero Shoes or /Xero Shoes at every place that you would @ or /.
What's the social media? You have Instagram?
Facebook.com/Xero Shoes, Instagram.com/Xero Shoes, Twitter.com/Xero Shoes, everything you can think of /Xero Shoes.
Xero.
Xero Shoes.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you.
Pleasure, man. Thanks so much.